Thank you, Saskia, Jim, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm giving these comments on behalf of Alan, who, as you heard, is at the White House. So in 10 minutes, I'm going to give you a 100,000-foot overview of where we come from, particularly for our guests from outside the Allen Institute. So just a very brief history. Of course, we were founded and we continue to be guided by Paul Allen. He continues to be very much involved, very much engaged. Yesterday alone, we had several dialogues on scientific matters. So we started in 2003 with the idea of doing a very specific project, the Mouse Brain Atlas. This was done with 30 people and on time and under budget. And then for the first 10 years of the Institute history, we continued to execute in this mode where we did sort of very large atlases on a scale that couldn't be easily done or that couldn't really be done at academia. We did it for the mouse, the developing mouse, the spinal cord of the mouse, the monkey, the developing monkey, the human, and the developing human. So this brought us to 160 people in 2011. Paul very much liked this and this mode of sort of helping the overall neuroscience community by generating these large resources. But he was also interested, and he kept on asking, well, how does the brain work? And can't we also ourselves get involved in basic research to try to find out what is the code? What is the code being used by neurons in general, and more specifically in cortex to understand vision, speech, reasoning, intelligence. And so we kicked off this 10-year program in March of 2012. So in 3 months from now, we'll be poised half-time, between the beginning of the program and the end of this particular phase of the program. And so then we doubled over the intervening, or more than doubled over the intervening years. So so that's our current number of employees. Our culture is between a university and a biotech startup. So we are like a university in the sense that we're driven by basic science. Everything we do here is meant to address basics of fundamental scientific question without regard for application or drug development or other things like that. So we're interested in how does the brain work. We have 2 model systems, the mouse and the human, if I can speak of a model system for the human. And we are focused on basic understanding of things like perception, coding. Is there a periodic table in the form of cell types? And of course, most of our researchers come directly from university. However, we also focus like a biotech in a sense we have goals. We have specific goals. We live or die by something called SMART goals, which many of you in university won't have heard, which are sort of specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and timely goals that we promise sort of a year ahead of time to achieve and then get judged on. We also have things like program management and other resources that are sort of common in big pharma or in biotech. So it's really a unique mixture between the academic and the biotech. We're not trying to compete with either of them. Universities are one of the most wonderful institutions founded in the West. But they're very good for basic discovery, but they're not so good in sort of executing large-scale, very integrated programs. And so this is what we try to do, and to work in conjunction with universities. So with a wide-flung networks of collaboration with universities and other non-profit research institutions. And of course, we're guided by a variety of councils, all of which come from our senior professors at universities and the next-gen leaders, of course, all of you also at universities. Yeah. So this is our current budget. This is a budget that has just been approved last Friday for the following year, and that's the exact number of people right now at the Brain Institute. In late 2014, early 2015, we reconstituted to the Allen Institute, singular. So there's a single Allen Institute, sort of the parent organization, and this is its mission statement. It's to unlock the complexity of bioscience and advance our knowledge to improve human health. And what's characteristic for us is sort of open science, multi-scale, team-oriented approach, where we focus on a number of specific projects right now in the brain sciences and in the cell sciences, but watch the space. So the Allen Institute and its independent business units So the Allen Institute also includes all the administration, human resources, finance, IT, legal, etc. That's all sort of within the parent institute. And then there are 3 separate business units. There's us. We are right now the and the biggest siblings, if you want. And they are sort of our younger sibling, the Allen Institute for Cell Science. You heard some of you who were here yesterday. You heard something about from what they're doing today yesterday, and you'll hear a little bit more today. And then we also have the Paul G. Allen Frontiers Group. So this is a group that gives out very focused funding in the area of neurobiology. Neither the Allen Institute for Brain Science nor the Allen Institute for Cell Science gives out funding. And as I said, watch this space. And so altogether, the sort of 360 scientists and staff right now at the end of 2016, although the total number of people, if you include students and interns and contractors, sort of is close to 450 right now. And that's our budget for all the Allen Institute as a whole. So I mentioned already, this is a timeline. So we have this larger vision. Sort of we operate over 5 years or 10 years plan. Some people make fun of that because when I give a talk, then very often a question comes up and says, well, the Soviet Union didn't work out so well with the 10-year plan, did it? Now, of course, the genius of long-term planning is that it enables you to deploy resources in a specific way to achieve specific strategic goals. And of course, you constantly have to readjust them. So this is not a plan that we came up with, for instance, the 10-year plan for the Brain Institute 2012, and it's set in stone, and then we get it tattooed on our bicep, and then we executed that without ever changing that. Right, so we have a specific way to change. It's called change management, where we update, where each year we get together and we discuss within the institute and with our advisory boards, does it still make sense? Should we still pursue certain things, or have we, because of our own experience in the previous years, decided to that certain things we shouldn't be doing because they're too early, too immature maybe, or other places are doing them already, and we should rather shift resources elsewhere. So all of that you can do much better if you have a clear vision of where you're going. So in particular this year, the highlights here at the Allen Institute for Brain Science were, of course, the Allen Brain Observatory. You'll hear a lot more about that. So there the idea is to do something similar to what's done since, roughly the 19th centuries, where you take large-scale observatory, partly because the instruments physically are very big and they're very costly if you want to peer out at the cosmos. And it leads to a very highly reproducible product in, for example, in astronomy or of course, since the 1920s and 30s in accelerator particle physics, elementary particle physics. So we are trying to do something similar, where we take a variety of techniques, optical techniques and electrical techniques in behaving animals, particularly in the case of the mouse, and try to image and reproduce them under highly reproducible conditions, and then make all the data together with all associated metadata and a lot of associated products available to the community at large. And over the years, we'll keep updating this sort of and this foundational resource at the Allen Brain Observatory. What's characteristic for all of our data from 2006, when we had our first data release, is publicly accessible via dedicated APIs as soon as it passes quality control. So we have a dedicated IT team of roughly 25 people that that builds our own APIs and updates and maintains them. All of this data is freely available without any commercial restrictions. So if you discover something fundamentally in there and start a company, make a lot of money, that would be great. We would appreciate if you cite us. But it's free. The data itself is freely available, and the data is available typically several years before it's actually published. So the hallmarks, we say we're big science, team science, open science in service of basic science. So big science is, as I said before, we're trying to do a few things that require by the nature of the beast, not because we love intrinsically big science, but because certain problems in modern biology can only be done by a combination of large number of diverse experts from molecular biology, from biochemistry, reaching all the way to physics, and then engineering and computer science, modelers, theoreticians. So all of them need to work very tightly. Animal care technicians, vet, all of these different experts, specialists need to work very tightly together to execute on a vision. In particular, in a day and age when we know that 2 out of 3 experiments cannot be reproduced. So it's all the more important to sort of work with highly reproducible systems, methods, tools, and instruments. Then team science, of course, by the nature of this, right, we have to work very closely together. This has all sorts of implications, starting, for example, with recruitment. We very much like to recruit, and we've been very fortunate to have been able to recruit an extraordinary cast of characters that comes here not because we pay outside salaries, we don't, not because we have bonuses, because we don't, but that come here because they believe in overall the mission, and they really like working as part of a larger team rather than working by yourself, competing with somebody halfway around the world. And so it also has implication about how we reward people, how we promote people internally. It has implication for publications. Many, not all, but some of our largest publications, the flagship publications in Nature, they tend to have a very large number of authors. And so this of course, has all sorts of implications for career development, et cetera, that we have to pay great attention to. And then lastly, as I said, we do open science. All of our protocols, everything is made accessible. Our animals are made accessible. There are now roughly 22,000 transgenic animals that have been shipped through Jackson that all of us come from our and from the institute, including viruses and other tools. All of that we make available to the community as soon as we can. This year, once again, is part of an ongoing sort of refresh of our 10-year plan. As Saskia mentioned already early on this year, we sort of reorganized it in order to focus some more. So there are these two large scientific programs, overall 3 programs here that we define. One is cell types, which is to try to understand. Well, it's really the basic question. Is it true, just like in chemistry, that every element falls into 1 out of 92 buckets? Is it true that every cell in the brain in general, or in cortex in particular, falls into one of a smallish-ish number of buckets? And how do you define these buckets? By transcriptional ways, by morphological, by electrophysiological, by functional, by where they project to, by the way they connect to, and then how do this generalize from one area to the next? How does it compare between the mouse and the human? Do these cell types tile? Right? So if you have a surface, a 2 plus epsilon dimensional surface like cortex, you can ask the question, well, is it true if you drop a pin through anywhere in cortex, is it true that each cell type is represented in terms of the extent of its dendritic tree at least once or several times? So those are the sort of question we're trying to address in human and in mouse. So those are the sort of the 2 siblings there. And then related, a brain TV program. So here the idea is the name ultimately comes from something Francis Crick and I wrote many, many years ago. The idea is that if you can display all the neurons as pixels, so there would be 4,000 by 4,000 pixels TV, and you could monitor and then in real time what sort of using a variety of different techniques, what sort of understanding would that lead us to? So the goal of the brain TV program is to measure activity in behaving animals, in this case in the visual system using visual stimuli, and right now, and you'll hear more of that tomorrow, also beginning in context of various behaviors, to record them using a variety of technique, particular cellular-based 2-photon calcium imaging, wide-field calcium imaging, and then very high-density recording with these beautiful neural pixel probes that we've built together with a consortium of HHMI and the Wellcome Foundation, the Gatsby Foundation, together with the Belgian foundry IMEC, where we can record from a piece of silicon that's 4 times thinner than a human hair, where we can record from close to 1,000 different locations and read out signals there, and then have them amplified and maxed. And so what you have at the end of the probe are 12 wires rather than 3 or 4 or 500 wires going out. And then also to try to understand that from a modeling point of view, as well as from a computational point of view. So you'll hear that as well. where we do sort of multi-granular modeling at a variety of different scales, from very abstract models like machine intelligence models to population dynamic models to models using a variety of integrated fire to very detailed biophysical models, and all of those models we get from description of cell type. And then also how can we understand these, the action, the transformation of the signals that undergo as an animal runs and receives a stream of photons and then actually acts out a particular behavior? How can we understand the transformation of those signals that we observe from a computational perspective? What are the individual steps reinterpreted as computation that cortex performs? And then lastly, we have this product, and we are now in the final stages of sort of finalizing the exact vision of this product, where we want to turn all those masses, those petabytes of data, into things that anybody can download, both our own scientists. So the product is both for ourselves to help us understand brain and model it better in a very mechanistic way, but as well as for the community at large. So how do we display the information? And then also, how do we take all those masses, those gigantic numerical fields, right, of transcriptome reads or GCAM signals or electrical signals, right? How do we turn that not only into data, but ultimately into knowledge, right? So what sort of semantic techniques do we use? Do we add a sort of natural language processing layer on top of that, so you can directly query that in natural English and ask questions like how many cell types are there, et cetera, et cetera. So that's all in the product. So I mentioned this already. So that's a basic question we're trying to ask. Sort of, think of at a very high level. Think of the equivalent of the periodic table. The observatory I also mentioned. So this is part of the data we release. So once again, the idea is that in this case, you're watching a mouse, watching a movie, in this case, Touch of Evil. The idea is that we show different sets of neurons from different transgenic animals that have GCAMP expressed in different layers, layer 2, 3, layer 4, beginning layer 5, at some point layer 6, excitatory cells right now, inhibitory cells in the next year, to show the same set of stimuli, the standard set of visual stimuli, grating, sparse noise, moving gratings, natural scenes, etc. And then to do that comprehensively for many different populations throughout many different cortical areas. So then you can really begin to get not just a piecemeal, okay, so I spend a lot of time here or here or here, but that you can get at the cellular level really a holistic understanding, and then also do that in the context of behavior. And then to analyze it, we came up with this wonderful, the IT team came up with this wonderful sort of thumbprint, we call it corona representation, where we can represent for each cell huge amount of information about the variability of the response, about how selective is it as a function of orientation, direction, selectivity, how selective each individual neurons respond to different natural scenes, what the receptor fields are, how selective each cell responds to the natural movie in this very compact way. And so this is done for thousands of cells. So all this, so it's not just sort of a raw dump here, all the GCAMP ROIs, but actually sort of a lot of pre-processing. You can download, of course, the original data, but you can also download, or you can just look at all the sort of scroll through and try to get a holistic gestalt view of the response of these different populations in different areas. None of this has been published yet. And then, as I said, this is the overall goal of Brain TV, to do these varieties of technique, wide field imaging, 2P cellular imaging, and then neuropixel imaging, at very high fidelity, where you can get, throughout the entire brain, you can see local field, you can see action potential and other signals, and then to use a varieties of models to understand that in a mechanistic way, because ultimately the hope is that we can I mean, this is one way of what it means to understand something, right? If you think, what does it mean to understand anything in sciences? Well, surely one way to understand something, if you're able to mechanistically reproduce it, if you understand the individual mechanistic, you have a mechanism in place that reproduces the observed phenomena using sort of various elements that you also measure, you know, including the individual cells that we measure and including their connectivity. Yeah, so these are just the last two slides that we presented at the board at our board meeting that we had last Friday. So these are just some of the highlights of this year. Many of you will well remember them because we had to spend a lot of time arguing about them. So foremost sort of batten down the hatches and go to our battle station, in the sense that we've done an enormous amount of planning over the first 3, 4, and now almost 5 years of the 10-year plan, and developing instrument and developing methods. But now it's sort of time to really sort of batten down and sort of execute on all of this development time and all the methods, and generate data, which we have been doing, and to focus more, right? As we've learned over the last 2 or 3 years, it's very easy to become distracted by many scientific questions. But for us, what we're trying to do is focus on a few questions and go very deep on these few questions. We tested the neuropixel probes. You'll hear about that in a team talk tomorrow, with a very successful delivery of this IARPA connectomics milestone, where a team together with collaborators in Texas at Princeton University sort of did high-resolution imaging of almost all cells in a particular volume of cortex, and then, you know, we prepared, we do the histology, we cut it into incredible thin 40 nanometer thick slices, and then reconstruct it in order to get ground truth of the connectivity of the known functional connectivity. Functional because now we know something about the orientation or direction selectivity of the neurons, and now we can relate it to the WIJ. We've expanded the Allen cell type database. There are now close to 1,000 cells in there, where we have the electrophysiology, the morphology, and the location. We've also added transcriptional data separately, and over the coming year, well, we'll come to that in a second. We've expanded the mouse connectivity data to more than 2,000 animals, transgenic animals. The original release and the original Nature paper several years ago was all for wild type. There's all this massive new connectivity data in there at the mesoscopic scale. As I said, we both introduced and did a second data release at the Allen Brain Observatory. And we have large-scale production. You'll hear quite a bit about that this morning also. You had large-scale production of single-cell transcriptional data from both mouse as well as human, for both cytoplasmic as well as nuclear RNA. It gives us a very different view onto cell types in the brain. And we've mapped the cortex using our sort of common coordinate framework system that's sort of now the de facto standard in the field, the CCF, a high-resolution, three-dimensional way to exactly pinpoint everything exactly where you are in the adult mouse. We've also released two human atlases. One is the Human Glioblastoma Atlas, and the second is an aging, dementia, and TBI project that we did together with local collaborators here. And we released sort of the most detailed, in fact, we got an entire special issue in Journal of Comparative Neurology, the most detailed human atlas ever. It's a NISL-based 1 pixel per micrometer resolution, intercalated with several other stains like PV stains and SMI stains, and it's all annotated in painstaking, lovingly work done over several years. Very highly detailed, annotated human atlas, including discovery of a few additional brain areas that had not been previously found. These are our big goals. Sort of, we have many goals, as you know, more than 30 SMART goals. But our big goal for 2017 is finalize sort of the vision for the product. How exactly is it supposed to look and feel, and what component will go into this product that's supposed to be there in 5 years. Then to focus overall on the data production for this. To go to right now we've got funding for the first phase of the IARPA, of this gigantic connectomics project, and we'd like to get to successfully conclude the first phase and move on to the second phase. we're in this, we're right now very busy, all of us extremely busy preparing for 3 very large grants. So traditionally, the bulk of, traditionally almost everything has been funded by the generosity of Paul Allen, but we've had between 8 and 30% of our funding has come from typically from very large government grants. They really like us because we execute on scale. You know, we deliver the product in the form that's desired. You know, we make it all accessible to the public, etc. So we're now involved in writing 3 very large NIH grants focused on transcription analysis of the both of the mouse as well as of the human brain. We're going to expand our Allen cell type database to include human. So next year, for the first time ever, you can download electrophysiological traces and morphology of neurons taken from slices at half an hour previously were part of somebody's brain and had to be removed for neurosurgical reasons. We're going to expand the Allen Brain Observatory. As you heard, and you'll hear more, we are spending a lot of resources on doing this patch-seq, which combines both transcription analysis as well as morphological and electrical analysis all in the very same cells, and do that in pipeline production. And we're also beginning W-alpha beta. This is, I'm very happy about. It's a very demanding project to try to characterize all the different types of different synapses, and different in terms of their sign, their distribution, their amplitude distribution, and whether they facilitate or depress over the short term among all the different cell types. This requires very fancy technology development. And to demonstrate array tomography as another sort of very high fidelity connectional technique. And to release our software, our modeling software IC. Then also, you may have heard about this. We are beginning to spin out right now and over the next 6 months to spin out sort of applied research effort. As I said, everything we're doing is really basic science, but Paul has always been interested, and of course we've always wondered what is it that we can take all this basic science and sort of apply to clinical cases. And so here we are particularly interested in electric fields. We are really beginning to understand in quite considerable mechanistic detail how electrical fields are generated, how spiking is generated in these dense networks, and to take that knowledge and to apply it to brain stimulation and or to understanding of epileptic seizure, as well as to take all the transcriptional genomics that we have and use that for target finding, for finding targets for drugs. And with that, I thank you for your attention this morning, and I welcome you once again to our symposium. I hope I've given you sort of an overall overview of where we are and where we're going. Thank you very much.